The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to our guest chaplain, Pastor Dave Depew, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Representative Proctor.
I'd like us to add to our prayer Chaplain L.D. Holmes. He's in for heart surgery tomorrow morning at 6:30. So we remember L.D. in prayer. Consider joining me as I pray for you. Almighty God, this legislative chamber is filled with men and women who you empower to represent the people of Kansas. Each session day, they listen to a word from you and act on the truths that are shared. This is the message of 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 26. The boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with God and with the people. Well, Lord, elected officials live in what seems to be a glass house, always in the public eye. We claim your promise, is said in the book of Psalms, chapter 5, verse 12. Surely, O Lord, you bless those who do right in your eyes. You surround them with your favor as with a shield. Lord, these representatives strive to be honest, have integrity, and revere God. In the book of Job, chapter 1, we read that Satan accused God of showing favor to Job, saying, have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have greatly increased in the land. Well, Lord, please take note of these faithful public servants. Put your hedge of protection around each, around their households, and all that they have. Please bless their work here, in the chamber, in their committees, and in their home communities. Increase their possessions and their favor with you and with the people. I pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Bagpipes now. No bill.
And now we have a special tribute for our guest from Ireland. As every member had the opportunity to record their presence. The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read.
Announcing passage of HB 2027-2092,
2117-2166, announcing passage of HB 2029 as amended, HB 2062 as amended, HB 2124 as amended, HB 2155 as amended, HB 2347 as amended. The Senate non-concurs in House amendments to Sub-Bill SB 45, request a conference, and has appointed Senators Erickson, Thomas, and Sykes as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate non-concurs in House amendments to SB 82, request a conference, and has appointed Senators Gossett, Clifford, and Holzer as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate non-concurs in House amendments to Sub-Bill SB 126, request a conference, and has appointed Senators Gossett, Clifford, and Holzer as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate non-concurs in House amendments to Sub-Bill SB 193, request a conference, and has appointed Senators Gossett, Clifford, and Holzer as conferees on the part of the Senate.
The Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to accede.
The Senate did not concur with House amendments to substitute Senate Bill 45 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate and that the conference committee be appointed.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. As conferees on part of the House, the Speaker appoints Representatives Estes, McNorton, and Stogsdill. Proceed.
The Senate did not concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 82 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate and that a conference committee be appointed.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. As conferees on part of the House, the Speaker appoints Representatives Will Carpenter, Bryce, and Susan Ruiz. Proceed.
The Senate did not concur with House amendments to substitute Senate Bill 126 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate and that a conference committee be appointed.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. As conferees on part of the House, the Speaker appoints Representatives Will Carpenter, Bryce, and Susan Ruiz. Proceed.
The Senate did not concur with House amendments to substitute for Senate Bill 193 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate and that a conference committee be appointed.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. As conferees on part of the House, the Speaker appoints Representatives Will Carpenter, Bryce, and Susan Ruiz. Introduction of original motions and House resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Resolution 6015 by Representatives K. Williams, Barth, and others, a resolution supporting the strengthening of Kansas trade partnership with Ireland to create a more prosperous future for all.
On H.R. 6015, the Speaker recognizes Representatives Christy Williams and Tarwater for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We would invite all of those Irish delegation members or caucus members. Come on up.
Where do you want me? Come on up. Someone got to take the photograph. He got 2 votes. This could be the next time you'll have 3 votes.
All right, we're good. You got everybody?
Come on.
Oh, we got people.
Come on, Kyle. Just tell them it's open to everyone. It's open to everyone.
Okay,
You
okay.
don't have to have Irish heritage to be a member.
So, yeah, by the way, the Irish delegation is open to anyone that even wants to be Irish. You don't have to be Irish. Okay, so, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, today I rise in support of Resolution H.R. 6015 to recognize and strengthen Kansas's trade partnership with Ireland. This resolution also represents our warm welcome to Chairman Mark Daly of the Irish Senate, someone who has been in counties and continues to be a champion of American-Irish trade. Currently, Ireland ranks 38th among Kansas export destinations with a real potential for growth. By strengthening this trade partnership, we can expand opportunities for Kansas farmers, businesses, and manufacturers to access Irish markets, foster economic growth, and on both sides of the Atlantic. This resolution, as mentioned, recognizes Chairman Daley, whose dedicated efforts have been instrumental in advancing trade relations across the nation. Chairman Daley has built a distinguished record through the following qualities: legislative innovation by spearheading key reforms in economic development, public welfare, and environmental sustainability. International collaboration, establishing robust cross-border partnerships, and by founding the American Irish Caucus. Economic leadership, creating policies that stimulates growth and job creation. An award-winning public service, earning national and international accolades for transparency and ethical governance. In fact, Chairman Daley was just recently reelected as Senate Chairman for a second term. This is only the second person to achieve this honor in Ireland's history. His efforts to bridge America and Ireland also include initiating the Irish American Legislative Summit, with the next summit being held August 20 through 23rd, just prior to the K-State, Iowa State Farmageddon football game in Ireland. It goes without saying that Chairman Daley would love for all of his Kansas friends to come visit Ireland for that football game, and I believe we have a very large delegation going. By passing this resolution, we affirm our commitment to creating new economic opportunities, strengthening cultural ties and personal relationships, and building more prosperous future for generations to come. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of H.R. 6015.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion carries.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that my words be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. The Speaker recognizes Representative Proctor for a motion to adopt the Agree to Disagree report on Senate Bill 105.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We conferenced with Senate Fed and State on Senate Bill 105, which would change the method by which we replace U.S. senators, insurance commissioners, and state treasurers if there's a vacancy until the next election. We reached sort of a tacit agreement, but not all the members of the conference committee were willing to sign the committee report. So, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the Agree to Disagree Conference Committee report and that a new conference committee be appointed.
Is there discussion? Seeing none. Representative, you may close.
I close, Mr. Speaker.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The Speaker appoints Representatives Proctor, Wagner, and Haskins as conferees on part of the House. Senate Bill 194 appears on the consent calendar for the first day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it'll remain on the consent calendar for the second day. House Bill 2390 appears on the consent calendar for the second day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it'll remain on the consent calendar for the third day. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions, the clerk will read.
HB 2329 by Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning children and minors. Related relating to the revised Kansas Juvenile Justice Code, increasing the cumulative detention limit for juvenile offenders and criminal penalties for juvenile offenders who use a firearm in the commission of an offense or who are repeat offenders, providing for increased placement of juvenile offenders in non-foster home beds in youth residential facilities, requiring the Secretary of Corrections to pay for the costs associated with such placements, requiring the Kansas Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee to monitor the impact and effectiveness of such placements, authorizing the Secretary to make expenditures from the evidence-based programs account of the State General Fund monies to contract for such beds in youth residential facilities.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2329. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member, for an explanation, the speaker recognizes Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be patient with me for a second. My computer locked out. Got it on the first try. I'm opposing HB 2329. We do need solutions to deal with our youth in need of guidance. I commend the Chair of Corrections for wanting to seek a solution. Longer sentences and strict guidelines only puts a bandage on a gaping chest wound. Children often reflect the environment around them. The environment for many of the children leaves them with very little hope. A child without hope becomes a danger to themselves and their community. I implore us to take this opportunity to consider the environment that we are building for our children along with locking them away. Thank you.
Are there any further explanation of votes? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Neighbor votes aye. Representative Meyer votes no. Any further changes? Seeing none, with 106 having voted in favor and 16 against the passage of House Bill 2329, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 18 by Committee on Assessment and Taxation, an act concerning motor vehicles relating to distinctive license plates, providing for the Hunter Nation distinctive license plate.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 18. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 83 having voted in favor and 39 against the passage of Senate Bill 18, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 98 by Senator Schallenberger, an act concerning motor vehicles relating to distinctive license plates, providing for the Route 66 Association of Kansas distinctive license plate.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 98. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? For an explanation, the speaker recognizes Representative Carlin. Are there any explanations? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Carlin votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none, with 105 having voted in favor and 17 against the passage of Senate Bill 98, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 121 by Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning insurance, relating to the regulation thereof, authorizing the Commissioner of Insurance to select and announce the version of certain instructions, calculations, and documents in effect for the upcoming calendar year, and cause such announcement to be published in the Kansas Register, allowing certain life insurers to follow health financial reports, adopting certain provisions from the National Association of Insurance Commissioners Holding Company System Regulatory Act
Members will be in their seats. Continue.
relating to group capital calculations and liquidity stress testing, exempting certain entities from state regulation as health benefit plans.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 121. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative O'Hobbesome votes no. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 101 having voted in favor and 21 against the passage of Senate Bill 121, the same having received a constitutional majority of the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
About the $2? Okay. Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of General Orders.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the Speaker appoints Representative Laura Williams to chair the Committee of the Whole.
All right, good morning, body. The first item of business is House Bill 2349. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2349, the chair recognizes Representative Schreiber.
Madam Chair, there were committee amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
House Bill 2349 was introduced on behalf of the City of Wichita and the Wichita Police Department. It deals with the Scrap Metal Theft Reduction Act, which originally passed in 2015. At that time, when it was initially passed, the Attorney General's office was tasked with the investigation and, further prosecution if there was needed of scrap metal thefts. This bill will allow local law enforcement to do the investigation part and relieve the Attorney General's office of doing that investigation. The local law enforcement won't have the authority then to, find the perpetrators of the scrap metal theft, but they will do the investigation and then forward that investigative report onto the AG's office for further administration of the act. As introduced, the bill also included sections 2 and 3, which have been deleted in the committee, and they would have allowed the municipalities to institute additional fines and so forth on the scrap metal theft criminals, but those were stricken because concerns from one of the conferees who was neutral to there would be a lot of confusion then on who has the ultimate jurisdiction, whether it's municipalities or the AG's office or the local law enforcement. So to provide some clarity for everyone, those sections were removed and now relies, local law enforcement will do the investigation, and then the AG's office, once they get the report, will further process that issue. I think that pretty much covers it. The proponents included the Kansas Sheriff's Association, Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police, and the Kansas Peace Officers Association, along with the Wichita Police Department, the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and the Attorney General's Office. There was a neutral Advantage Recycling who brought the issue of these potentially conflicting jurisdictions to mind, and then the amendment to the bill. So I think that covers the description of it. I'll stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carrie of the bill did an excellent job describing the bill. We deal with these scrap metal bills, it seems like every single year. And I will say that I do want to give a shout out to the chair of Judiciary because these are relatively minor bills, all things considered, but to the stakeholders, it is a very important issue, and it gets very contentious behind the scenes. And so she was able to bring together disparate groups and actually hash out an agreement rather than have this bill hover in limbo. So, Bill, I urge your support. Thank you very much.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the senator from Parker, Kansas, who 10 years ago, along with me, said, "We told you so." Thank you. Please vote for this bill.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, could you stand for a question, please?
Yes.
Several years ago, we passed a bill that penalized and fined the buyers of scrap metal from the junkyards. Do you remember that bill?
Yes, a little.
This bill here just fines or makes criminals out of people who steal it and then try and sell it. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yeah.
So this bill does not modify or change the existing statute for the buyers of the junk metal, right?
Right. I think there was a piece in there that was, section 2, I believe, was deleted that spoke to additions to that part about dealing with or finding the dealers, and that part was removed totally.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Schreiber, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports House Bill 2349 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Schreiber to report House Bill 2349 favorably for passage. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item up for business is House Bill 2392. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2392, the chair recognizes Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the adoption of the committee report. House Bill 2392.
Representative, I don't think there was a committee report.
Okay, well, what would you like me to say?
You may proceed.
Thank you. House Bill 2392 is a bill to allow nurses with their BSN degree to be able to teach LPN classes. Right now, you have to have a master's degree in order to do that. Kansas has a workforce problem. This is a workforce bill. It will allow someone who is already a nurse to teach these LPNs and help them get into the workforce. We have a significant problem, particularly in rural areas with higher degrees. We're trying to eliminate one small part. It does not affect anything else with nursing requirements. And with that, Madam Chair, I also have an amendment.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
On page 1 in line 35 by striking or directly related to medical. On page 2 in line 1 by striking or medical school. In line 4 after required by inserting by the board. In line 11 by striking or. In line 12 by striking all before degree. In line 13 by striking or medical school. In line 16 after required by inserting by the board. On page 1 in the title in line 2 by striking maximum.
Representative, would you like to continue to explain your amendment?
Yes, thank you. One of the reasons why we have this amendment is that we worked with the Board of Nursing. We had the director of the Board of Nursing go through it, make any changes she wanted to. We incorporated those changes in the bill, and they're fine with it. We have gotten their stamp of approval, and I hope for your support in this bill.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Sawyer Clayton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience. Body, this amendment does make the bill a little bit more palatable. I urge you to support the amendment. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Wassinger, you may close on your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that I close.
You've heard the motion by Representative Wassinger to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Representative, you can continue. Please no things from the gallery. Thank you.
All right,
Representative, you may proceed.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports
Let's keep discussing the bill, Representative. If you'd like to continue to speak to the bill, or the chair can recognize the next.
You can recognize someone else.
To speak to the bill, the chair recognizes Representative Sawyer Clayton.
Okay, sorry about that. I think part of it was a little bit of confusion due to the unexpected amendment. So, body, as we discussed in agenda, we still, had a little bit of concerns. Obviously, we do have a workforce issue, but I think hopefully this might get worked out in other lesser chambers. We'll just have to see on that. So, vote your district, vote your conscience. I do think that the amendment did make the bill better. Thank you.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will the carrier of the bill please stand for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, good morning, Representative.
Good morning, Representative.
Do you know what week it is?
I think I do. It's MS Awareness Week, yes?
Yes, it is. That's right. Shout out to all the Kansas families like ours with loved ones who have multiple sclerosis. We see you. So look I have a great big X on my questions here because your amendment did address some of those questions. Thank you so much for that. But I do have just one quick question. The bill did move quickly from introduction to the floor in less than 2 weeks, and that's why I have a question that I didn't ask in committee, so I do apologize for that. Are you familiar with the statewide Regents Nursing Workforce Task Force that was established in 2023 to convene stakeholders such as schools, employers, associations, government, and nurses to resolve the critical nursing shortage?
I was somewhat aware of that.
Okay.
We also spoke with the Board of Nursing and made sure that they were good with it and they were okay with what we did. And so we feel like we're on the same line as they are.
Okay, so that task force actually includes a whole bunch of stakeholders that I just mentioned. Were they invited to be part of or consulted in the drafting of the bill?
Not that I'm aware of, but I would have to get more information.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your answers. Have a good one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Oropeza.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. I do have a question for the carrier of the bill. Thank you for coming over. My question is, will you explain a little bit further what your amendment did for the bill?
The amendment took out certain words and put in board to make it clear that the nursing board was in charge of doing all these things, and just some other verbiage that they wanted changed. There was nothing of great substance that I found, but it made the nursing board feel good about the bill.
Oh, okay, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, so the amendment did help. It took out that we were not going to allow medical personnel to teach nurses. We are two very distinct professions in general in the state, as well as across the nation. We do very distinct jobs in the hospital, ambulatory centers, various areas in the state, as well as across the nation. Which I do appreciate that. I did appreciate the amendment. I thought it made it a little bit better, but it doesn't quite get at the core of what needs to be done here in the state of Kansas. And in saying that, we have open seats in schools right now. And you will get a copy of that information from the Kansas State Board of Nursing in regards to how many open seats are not being filled for various reasons. And I will make sure that is on your desk tomorrow prior to the final vote. There are a couple schools that are turning away about 100 annually students. There are programs that are maxed out. So we have some issues there, whether it be because of facility size or seat size, depending on that. And then we have 8 programs in the ADN program that are not getting enough qualified applicants. We have 23 ADN programs in the state of Kansas, and 8 of them are not getting qualified applicants. So, in saying that, for our PN program, which is eventually they're becoming a licensed practical nurse, we have a total of 23 schools in Kansas, and 12 are not getting enough qualified applicants. There are a lot of reasons we have a workforce issue with nursing. We make more money at the bedside than we do teaching. And I'm sure you've heard that from teachers who are in schools. They make more doing other jobs. So there's a lot of factors when you look at this that need to be worked on. But passing this bill and decreasing the educational level in which we teach our nurses is not the appropriate course or path. We need to understand that eventually these people will come out of school. And do you want to have somebody who has less of an opportunity and who has not the full criteria and or conceptual evaluation of nursing practice in general? Is that what we want? Is that who you want at your bedside? There are a lot of things that are taught when you obtain your master's degree that being a nurse at a bedside, you don't automatically get. And it was quite eye-opening when I went through my master's degree as well. So it is expensive, but there is options within the Nursing Practice Act.
Representative, can you please stick to the bill?
Yes, this is in regards to watering down education for nurses.
Okay, please get to the topics of the bill. Thank you.
Okay, so with the topics of the bill, ultimately, this is going to lead to watering down at a very fast facet in regards to 1 year for LPNs, 2 years for ADNs, 1 year for LPNs, 2 years for ADNs. So I do appreciate the amendment. I believe removing that part was definitely a great start.
but ultimately, educators were not included in this bill, and I'm not exactly sure why. It was more directed to presidents of community college and not actual people who teach in the nursing programs. So it worries me that we did not have stakeholders at the table. It worries me that the people who are teaching and know the most about being taught and educated were not there to give their opinions and were told that a lesser version than what has come through. Now, the amendment did help. That I do agree with. But overall, for your safety and mine, I believe we need to vote this down and look at doing something as a team going forward and bringing back the best version possible for the state that does not compromise healthcare. And I would be voting no for this bill, and I will get you that information. Thank you.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Body, I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on how good this bill is for those in need of nursing services. I have a PhD in nursing. I've been involved in nursing education for the last 11 years. There are two distinctions when it comes to nursing. LPNs or LVNs, some depending on where you are, it's a licensed practical nurse or a licensed vocational nurse. And then there's a registered nurse. This bill helps registered nurses who are more trained, who provide more comprehensive care, complex assessments, and treatments to patients. They have the education and the understanding of how to care for patients at a far greater level than LPNs and LVNs do. This bill allows these qualified registered nurses to go and teach these licensed practical nurses so they too can go and provide care at the bedside. I encourage you to please vote for this bill. It helps get nurses into our workforce. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Wassinger. Oh, the chair recognizes Representative Haskins. Haskins.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, I wanted to circle back on what my colleague from ks.gov spoke about. The other aspect that you need to keep in mind, and I've confirmed with 3 School of Nursing deans, is that we're getting over our skis a little bit because there are accreditations that are required for universities to teach. And if we start offering educational programs without the pedagogy or andragogy experience in teaching, then schools will start to become devalued based on their accreditation. So I want you to think about that too, because it seems it's pretty consistent that we feel we know better than what the schools that have been teaching nursing for hundreds of years and what they face with accreditation. So accreditation as well as teacher qualifications is something that needs to be thought about. So I'll be voting no.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Wassinger, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I close. No? I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports HB 2392 favorable for passage as amended.
You've heard the motion by Representative Wassinger to report House Bill 2392 favorably as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. The next item up for business is Senate Bill 84. For the purposes of carrying Senate Bill 84, the chair recognizes Representative Esau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Senate Bill 84 modifies the criminal use of a financial card to include certain conduct involving gift cards by amending KSA 215828, the crime of criminal use of a financial card, to add 2 new violations of the crime. The first is acquiring or retaining possession of a gift card or gift card redemption information without the consent of the cardholder, gift card issuer, or gift card seller. The second is altering or tampering with a gift card. The penalty for violation would be similar things that what we have with the other kinds of cards, so I can go into that detail if someone wants me to. The proponents of the bill state it provides an answer for the increasing occurrence of fraud involving gift cards, and the neutral testimony thought that it might increase expenditures from the Board of Indigent Services, but they didn't have any amount, and the Sentencing Commission estimates we might need another prison bed at some point. There's actually a very, very small fiscal note on this in comparison to our overall budget, under $5,000 in a fiscal year. And this bill passed the Senate 39-0, and I believe it will actually help some of our more vulnerable citizens who get caught up in thinking that they're buying a gift card for a reason that is not exactly what was stated by the person who has called them or convinced them to go buy this gift card and then turn it over to them. So I am adamantly in favor of this bill because of who it protects. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The carrier of the bill did an excellent job. The bill is good. Vote for it. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? If not, Representative Esau, you may close.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ranking. Madam Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports Senate Bill 84 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Esau to report Senate Bill 84 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes. The next item up for business is House Bill 2149. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2149, the chair recognizes Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. Madam Chair, there was one committee amendment to House Bill 2149. So I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue, Representative.
With that, we're now on substitute for House Bill 2149. This bill has been in the works for close to a year, if not a little bit longer. It has been discussed. I hate to say it's been discussed, amended and amended again and amended again. And finally, we did a substitute bill just because it got so many bubbles on the amendments that I wanted a clean bill to come out to you to help with the confusion. The bill relates to a couple different items. First.
Body, please keep the volume down. Sorry, Representative, continue.
Thank you. First is parallel distributed energy generation. What am I talking about? Rooftop solar. Put it down to where it's simple and what it is. They're typically smaller systems. They're installed on a retail customer's property for personal use, but they're also connected into the utility grid to route excess power that direction. Such an interconnection does allow for the power consumption of their personal use, but also for others. This process very similar to net metering, which uses smart meters, which not every utility provides. Last year, under House Bill 2588, we heard net metering, and it passed the House 113-7. But there's a second part to this bill. How many of you have had the pleasure of some evening someone knocking on your door or calling you and saying, I'm with Evergy or some other utility, and we're helping put rooftop solar on your homes. And if you do this with me, we'll even get the governor to pay for the bill. We've all heard those calls. So last year, we started discussing consumer protection in the committee, but we ran out of time. And I promised the committee we're going to bring a good consumer protection bill this year, and jointly we did. This bill does not necessarily open the consumer protection statutes under 50-623. However, that statute can still be used for prosecution in some areas of the distributed generation. Substitute for House Bill 2149 enacts a new section of law to establish consumer protection as it relates to the distributed energy retailers. It requires retailers to disclose certain information to prospective customers prior to entering into a contract. It provides very specific formulas for system sizing, damage to structures, registration of system retailers with the Secretary of State, specific total aggregate cost of energy systems a customer will incur when they contract for a retailer to install. Includes associated fees for transferring, finance, warranty, even transferability of tax credits, rebates, incentives, or other renewable energy certificates associated with each system. The bill requires the name and certification number of the individual certified by the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners who will oversee projects, along with the license number of the master electrician or electrical contractor responsible for permitting and installation. Furthermore, the bill provides for civil penalties of up to $10,000 for misleading statements when presenting various disclosures, and it provides for customer rights to repair or rebuild their respective systems as long as the repairs do not increase in export capacity. Protections also extend to the utilities in regards to rights to disconnect customer systems if it causes electrical effects such as power quality problems or hazardous conditions on the grid. The final concern during the negotiations on House Bill 2149 was the amount of the distributed energy customers can place back onto the utility grids, because that does have related costs from the utilities associated with it. So we stair-stepped it. July 1 of 2025, we'll limit it to 6%. July of 26, we'll kick it to 7%. July of 27, it will go to 8% and remain there thereafter. And the final item that I wanted to bring up to you is no utility will be required to make parallel generation services available to a customer requesting an interconnection that capable of exporting 34.5 kilovolts or more. In other words, we stop the commercial out of this bill. This is for rooftop solar type only. I know there's a lot to take in here, but Ms. Chair, with that, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative O'Hobson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The carrier of the bill, the chair of the committee, did a great job, excellent job explaining it. I want to thank him and also the members of our committee for their leadership on this particular bill. It's a great bill, and I ask for everyone to support it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in strong support of the substitute for House Bill 2149. This truly was a hard effort that went on for over a year with lots of folks who had to be drugged to the table, kicking and screaming, and lots of folks with a lot of different opinions. But I want the House to know that my chairman has worked hard. He has accomplished what seemed to be impossible to me. Last weekend, my chairman, along with Nick Myers, the revisor's office, and his staff, worked with multiple stakeholders all weekend long to get us to where we are today. And I really want to express my appreciation, not only the chair, but also the revisor's staff and the multiple stakeholders who came in with very divergent opinions and ended up in consensus that this is what we ought to do. I also want to apologize to the members of my caucus. I should have been at caucus this morning to explain this bill in more detail. The bill brief that we have in our caucus was the original bill, HB 2149. HB 2149 is not what you're voting on today. You're voting on the substitute for HB 2149. And so the people who originally testified as opponents of the bill were drugged to the table by the chairman and made to agree, quite frankly. And so I think you could consult with any of the utilities that were at one time listed as opponents of this legislation, and they will tell you we didn't get everything we wanted, but what we got was as good as we could do. And so I want my members to understand that the people who were opponents of this legislation initially, and the statement that it's the the statement that the bill is introduced is not their final product and they are working with other stakeholders to perfect the language, that was all accomplished. That is not to say, however, that everybody's happy about this. I don't think anybody's happy about it. But on the other hand, when we got to the bottom line and the bottom dollar of it, I think everyone in the room nodded their head in assent, and no one stood up and said, wait a minute, we need to do more. Now, yours truly, however, has a bad propensity. He never leaves well enough alone. And so I have to tell you about an amendment. In the course of drafting the legislation, as the chairman said, we wanted to make sure that solar installers, and this is principally solar, it could apply, I think, to small wind generation as well, but that the solar installers needed to be legitimate business people, not fly-by-nights who are driving in from out of state, grabbing people's money and leaving town. And so we included in the original, or in the substitute bill, a provision that these installers had to be registered with the Secretary of State. Problem, of course, is that sole proprietors typically don't register with the Secretary of State. So if we were to leave the bill in its present form, it would mean that only corporations, LLCs, and limited partnerships would be able to engage in this business. So with that, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, I do have an amendment.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
On page 2 in line 10, after entity, by inserting required to be registered with the Secretary of State pursuant to the Business Entity Standard Treatment Act, KSA 17-1901, et sequent, and amendments thereto. On page 4 in line 7, after who, by inserting if required pursuant to state law.
Would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, I would, Madam Chair. All this does is it says if under the Kansas Business Entities Act that you need to be registered with the Secretary of State, you need to be registered with the Secretary of State in order to engage in this business. If you're not required to be registered with the Secretary of State, then you're not required to be registered with the Secretary of State to do this type of business. And so that's what my amendment is.
To speak to the amendment, the chair recognizes Representative Delberding.
Mr. Representative.
I refuse to answer questions from you. No, seriously, what can I do for you?
You had the audacity to amend my bill after all that work?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well,
This bill was so close to perfect, I just couldn't leave it alone, Mr. Chair.
okay. I want the body to know we worked very hard on this bill in committee and out of committee, and we brought what we thought was the perfect bill. We go through it page by page by page on the amendments, and he brings up one question, and we all just sat there like, We didn't think of that. So I want everybody to know how, this is a truly valued member of the committee. I love working with you guys. There's a lot of stuff that I just couldn't do without you, but I do appreciate that. This amendment, I specifically asked the representative to bring. It is a good one. It needs to be part of this bill. So I would appreciate everybody's support on the amendment. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Carmichael, you may close on your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I close and move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Carmichael to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that lone voice of dissent. It's a good day in Kansas. Thank you.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Wilborn.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. At the risk of being redundant, you've heard the accolades. I want to shout out to two particularly people. That is the carrier of the amendment, who was a key player in making this work, and our chairman, who is very technical and strategic in his planning over time. Bringing this together was almost impossible in my viewpoint. That's why I kept my mouth shut. More importantly, I heard from some of the proponents and opponents saying, you know, this could be a model piece of legislation to help other states. So I encourage your support, and I applaud our chairman and the carrier of the amendment for the hard work they did. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Delberdang, you may close.
Well, there ain't much more to be said on that. I came prepared to dive as much as we needed to, but I think we just need to keep it right here. So, look at that. With that said, Madam Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it report substitute for House Bill 2149 as amended favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Delberdang to report House Bill 2149 as amended favorably for passage. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item up for business is Senate Bill 5. For the purpose of carrying Senate Bill 5, the chair recognizes Representative Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a committee amendment. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. May continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, Senate Bill number 5 is intended to stop federal money from being used by any state or county election official unless that money comes from an unauthorized act of appropriation from Congress or quote unquote otherwise provided by state law. This would end the practice of presidential executive orders being used to send money to the states for election administration purposes. And this particular bill was not unanimous, but it was very highly bipartisan, supported out of both the committee and across the Senate, and I'll get into that in a second. Here's the issue that's being resolved. During the COVID era, the federal government, by way of executive order or agency action, sent vast amounts of money down to the states to use for various election-related expenditures. Of particular concern was money that was being used by the agencies for voter registration drives, particularly those that focused on narrow demographics. In 2021, we passed out a piece of legislation that banned money from private persons being used for election-related purposes. And this particular bill coming over from the Senate, Senate Bill number 5, bans those actions by the executive branch being used by the federal government. The only exception is for funds that are specifically authorized by the U.S. Congress. This bill would not ban funds from the pre-existing act, which is called Help America Vote Act, or HAVA for short. This bill passed out of our committee with an 11-to-1 vote. Proponents included the representative from Opportunity Solutions Project and a couple of precinct persons from Sedgwick County GOP. The opponents' arguments came from the League of Women Voters and the Health Forward Foundation. Neutral arguments were provided by the Secretary of State's office. And while it passed out of the Senate with an amendment on the Senate floor, the final result of that vote was 33-6, so it received bipartisan support in the Senate, came over to us, and we in committee changed, as I said, one amendment, the statute book to the Kansas Register. Finally, Madam Chair, I'd like to bring up that this bill has no fiscal note, and there was some discussion that with the Association of Kansas Counties saying that it could negatively affect money that they may miss out on for special funding. But the president has already rescinded Executive Order 14019, so the likelihood of any special funding coming from the federal level for election administration during the next 4 years is already at zero. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the carrier of the bill, stand for a question. Thank you, colleague. I'm just curious, you ended with that the current Senate bill tell us what the administration just.
Are you referring to the vote for the Senate bill?
Yeah, you said that the current presidential administration took those funds away.
Right, so the bill that we were talking about, the fiscal note and what would be the impact on the budget, and we received that there was no impact to the budget, no fiscal note associated with it. There was some concern from the Association of Kansas Counties. They said that it could negatively affect the budget of county election offices because they would miss out on special federal funding. However, the current administration has already rescinded that executive order that authorized that federal funding.
Right.
So that's kind of a moot point.
So if the administration has removed that executive order, do we need this bill?
Well, as we see from the previous administration and executive that they, again, with an executive order, instituted those particular funds, and the current or future executive could also either reinstitute, continue, or rescind that same executive order. So this allows us to do it as a state, not regarding what happens in DC, keeping all of the control here locally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So colleagues and Madam Chair, I rise up in opposition to Senate Bill 5. This is a bill that we've heard before, worked before. It comes to us with maybe a new coat of paint, but it's the same issue. It goes under the guise of election integrity, but what it does do is it really politicizes federal funds to promote a fair and secure election. The example given for why we have to have this bill is based on a disagreement with a presidential administrations, their executive order that's no longer the president here. And this preemptive approach keeps coming back time and time again in elections. And so I would encourage you to take a moment and think about why is it that it's only when there is a Democratic governor or president that we all of a sudden have to generate a new bill or law? How is that best for Kansans overall? Is that what they're asking? Because not once did someone when I knocked on the door and they said, hey, you know what? Can we stop federal funds for elections? But yet this is a priority here. I want to talk a little bit about the myth of the Biden bucks that keeps being referred to. You know, the Biden bucks was a federal initiative to promote election security, getting individuals out to vote. It was not a partisan issue. There was no partisan politics related to the executive order. It was to encourage that we have more voters, which would benefit both sides of this. This enhance of voter choice, if you will, is only good for the overall country as well as the state. It also made it a little bit less polarized because we brought to an equality a level of where all votes matter, not just certain votes. So to use the argument that, well, the Biden bucks, man, we can't let that happen again. Well, then I ask you, what should our federal funds be used for if it comes to making sure that our citizens know everything that they need to know before they vote? Now, the Speaker, the Secretary of State, and the carrier of the bill was correct. The Secretary of State did testimony in our committee and they were neutral, and they said that it would not impact the HAVA funds. But there is one note that needs to be kept in mind, is that there are HAVA and EAC does have discretionary grants. And these discretionary grants don't necessarily have to go through the Secretary of State's office. And if, based on this bill, if, for example, there is a charge that we give a bill out that the Department of Administration and has to implement a stronger cybersecurity system that includes elections, and they do decide to apply for a discretionary grant, and they receive it based off this bill, they would not be able to use those funds for that. So overall, let's just keep in mind that by turning election funding into a battleground, we're not actually making our election system stronger. We're actually politicizing things that we should just stay out of. Let's support the fact that our federal government and our states are working together to try to make sure that our Kansans are receiving the most access and funds available to vote properly. Please vote no.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may be biased as the chair of the election committee, but I don't think there are many things more important that we do in here than election law. It really strikes at the very core of who we are as a people and how we govern ourselves as a representative government. So I think it's very important when we're considering laws to change or adjust our election methods or funding or anything like that, that we proceed from a position of fact and a position of data. And while I have the deepest possible respect for the ranking minority member on the committee, I would like to correct something he said. He said that if EAC grants, U.S. Election Assistance Commission grants were issued, we would be unable to use them because of this law. This bill specifically says that if federal money is authorized by Congress for the use of elections or election integrity or election security or voter education, or if it's authorized by this body, the Kansas Legislature, then it can be used for elections. And so this bill would have absolutely no impact on money that was authorized by Congress to be used for elections, including EAC grants, HAVA grants, whatever. So I just want to make sure that everybody understood that before they voted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can the carrier of the bill please stand for a question? Can you explain to me what a narrow demographic is?
I don't understand your question.
You said that the funds were being used for voter drives for narrow demographics. So what does that mean?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I did not come up and make mention of, I think the ranking member came up and said something about the previous administration Biden bucks or something to that effect. There's a reason that I didn't make it partisan. This is a very bipartisan bill. It received bipartisan support strongly, and it applies to both parties. But to answer your question, the previous administration, since the name was invoked, Biden, sent particular dollars down to particular demographics and not across the entire nation. They narrowed where the monies would be spent within the administration and their party. So I would ask you to take a look at that and see where those dollars were actually spent. Those will be the narrow demographics that were targeted by the Biden bucks.
Thank you for that. So first, it is actually, when someone comes to be registered to vote, it is illegal to turn someone away. So registering someone to vote is actually a nonpartisan activity. And then also, it's about the groups that want to register their voters. So if a group is actually choosing to be an outside demographic, that is on their individuals. And it seems to be one group of individuals who do not want to expand our voting rolls. So it is not a narrow demographic because of how the money is being sent. It is a narrow demographic because how the money is spent. And so I do take exception for that, but it does feel a little pointed and it feels a little coded also.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Bergquist.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the process of the Elections Committee. It's been a very bipartisan effort for the most part, but it also brings up things that are about what one of the previous speakers talked about, a battle. An election is a battle, but our job in the Elections Committee is to bring about civil process in the middle of a battle of the ideas and a battle of candidates, so that at the end of the day, we have civil government on January the 21st or on November whatever the day is that the election happens. I appreciate the process and I urge your support of SB 5.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Penn, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the great discussion that we've had here today. I think that this is a very worthy bill, and I hope that we can continue the track record of strong bipartisan support because this would affect any administration, Republican, Democrat, Independent, or any other party, to make sure that, the people have the consent of the government and that they are in honest and fair elections. So, Madam Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports out favorably for passage Senate Bill 5 as amended.
Was it amended? It wasn't amended. Was it amended?
I'm sorry, we didn't amend it here. Pass it out favorably. Thank you.
You've heard the motion by Representative Penn to report Senate Bill 5 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item up for business is Senate Bill 6. For the purposes of carrying Senate Bill 6, the chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and committee report is adopted. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise before the body to present Senate Bill 6. As the chair of the Elections Committee over the last 3 years, I've tried very hard to focus on things that are a threat to voter confidence, because I think in this country we have a real crisis of voter confidence. It's getting better, but we're far from back where we were before 2020 for a variety of reasons. And I can think of nothing that is more corrosive of voter confidence than a form of elections that requires a paragraph or a page to describe to the voter how a candidate won. Our method of voting here in Kansas, very simply, is the person with the most votes wins the election. Whether that's one vote difference or that's thousands of votes different. Ranked choice voting, on the other hand, requires the voters to rank multiple candidates and then through a convoluted process of multiple ballot counts arrive at the conclusion of who won the election. And I'd be happy if somebody wants to ask a question about it, to go into detail about all the examples where this has produced a result that voters weren't necessarily happy with, where it produced a vote where the person who won wasn't anybody's first choice or was a minority's first choice. But I would just say that this voting method is anathema to voter confidence and improving voter confidence. So what Senate Bill 6 very simply does in a couple paragraphs is prohibit any government in the state of Kansas, from school board district to the state of Kansas, from using ranked choice voting as a method for selecting elected officials in this state. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Haskins.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and audience in the gallery. Thank you for staying with us here. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 6. I understand the intent of the bill, and the carrier of the bill did a fine job addressing the issues related to that. Again, as I mentioned earlier in another testimony, that we're getting over our skis on this. The fact is that we are, by a state, we are deciding in a local option state what citizens of Kansas can decide on how they want to best vote. 50 cities in the country use ranked choice voting. Research has shown that ranked choice voting does lead to more voter turnout, does give more enhancement of voter encouragement. It will preserve local autonomy by giving them the opportunity to decide how they want to run their elections. And it also, and this is something I think we need to circle back on, it also encourages electoral innovation. We have to be able to be willing to support new ideas. For example, if we didn't have ranked choice voting, I believe it was in Minnesota, we would not have recognized that Captain Jack Sparrow ran for mayor. Now, he didn't win, and he actually goes by Captain Jack Sparrow. We looked it all up. But these individuals, no matter how unique their name, deserve the opportunity to run. Let's also keep in mind that we have passed bills that have limited grassroots efforts. So let's not explore an avenue that we're not as familiar with. Let's not take away local options from our municipalities. And let's not discourage voters to not trust us by telling them how they should vote. Please oppose Senate Bill 6.
For further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. So I didn't intend to speak today on this bill, but I find a trend of us stepping in and telling municipalities what they can and can't do, which is kind of the opposite of local control if you think about it. I don't see why we should care whether a school board or a city council decides to use ranked choice voting. I think it's an overstep on our part. I personally enjoyed when the Democratic Party used ranked choice voting in our presidential primary a few years ago, and I very much appreciate that the carryover of the bill did not include that sort of thing in the bill, so we still can continue to do ranked choice voting in a party primary. But I just think, you know, at the end of the day, this is poor legislation. I personally have gotten emails from my constituents saying that they're in favor of ranked choice voting, and they're going to be pretty disappointed if this bill passes. So I would urge you to oppose it. I don't think it's a very big ask. We should just let municipalities do what they want, and we can continue to do what we would want on our level. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Proctor, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the deepest respect for local control, and I am always concerned whenever we step in and we tell a local entity that they must do something or cannot do something. But I think that this body and the state government also has a role in protecting the rights of every Kansan. And the ranked choice voting method disenfranchises everybody whose first choice gets dropped out of a round, a second or a third or a fourth round of voting. And so I think that we have a role as a body in preserving the principle of one person, one vote. So with that, Madam Chair, I move that when the body rises and reports, it reports Senate Bill 6 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Proctor to report Senate Bill 6 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item up for business is Senate Bill 23. For the purposes of carrying Senate Bill 23, the chair recognizes Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were committee amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify. Opposed, no. Motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Thank you. Senate Bill 23 might look familiar. It deals with insurance and reducing time for inquiries from 15 days down to 14, and also giving the commissioner ability to extend pilot programs past 1 year if necessary. We've also passed a very similar bill in the House, House Bill 2043, pretty easily. The Senate saw what we did and said, we're going to pass it unanimously. They didn't make many adjustments. The House did make one minor adjustment on publication date. Outside that, I will stand for questions. Thank you.
To speak to the bill, the chair recognizes Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The carrier of the bill did an excellent job. And as he stated, the only thing we did in committee was change it, the date of publication from the statute book to the register. Please support Senate Bill 23. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Bergkamp, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee arises and reports, it reports SB 23 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Bergkamp to report Senate Bill 23 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The last item up for business is Senate Bill 24. For the purposes of carrying Senate Bill 24, the chair recognizes Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were committee amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Y'all need to wake up a little bit.
I second that.
You may continue.
Again, we've already more or less seen this bill. This has to do with giving the commissioner the right to reduce fees, which is always a good thing. The House passed a somewhat equivalent bill, HB 2050, very easily. The Senate also passed this unanimously. They didn't make any changes to the bill. On the House side, we did change the effective date. And with that, I will stand for questions.
To speak to the bill, the chair recognizes Representative Neighbor.
Since it appears I'm standing between you and lunch, I have quite a long explanation here. I can see you all are about to fall asleep. Rise and shine. This is a good bill. Please support Senate Bill 24.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Bergkamp, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports SB 24 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Bergkamp to report Senate Bill 24 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The speaker recognizes Representative Croft for a motion to reconsider House Bill 2392. Please note the maker of the motion has 2 minutes. Others have 1 minute.
Having voted on the prevailing side, I move pursuant to House Rule 2303 that the House reconsider its previous action of recommending House Bill 2392 favorably for passage and the bill be returned to the order of business general orders. Did I say that correctly?
You've heard the motion by Representative Croft. Does any member wish to speak to the motion? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? Nope. Okay, seeing none. You've heard the motion by Representative Croft. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. Representative Croft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we return House Bill 2392 to Health and Human Services Committee.
You've heard, it is debatable. This is a debatable motion. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? The chair recognizes Representative Oropeza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I greatly appreciate this and hope everybody does vote to reconsider. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, to re-refer and send it back to Health and Human Services. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Croft, you may close on your motion.
I close.
You've heard the motion by Representative Croft to re-refer House Bill 2392 back to Health and Human Services Committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. This concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes Majority Leader.
Madam Chair, I move your rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole recommends that HB 2349, SB 84, 5, 6, 24, 23, and sub HB 2149 be passed as amended, and HB 2392 be re-referred back to the Committee on Health and Human Services.
The speaker recognizes Representative Laura Williams to adopt the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion to adopt the committee report. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Stand by while the clerks load the system. The speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that an emergency be declared in House Bill 2349, Senate Bill 84, substitute for House Bill 2149, Senate Bill 5, Senate Bill 6, Senate Bill 23, and Senate Bill 24 be advanced to the order of business, final action on bills and concurrent resolutions.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 2349 by Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning the Scrap Metal Theft Reduction Act, authorizing law enforcement officers to conduct investigations of violations of the act.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2349. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Steele votes aye. Representative Mosier votes aye. Representative Tarwater votes aye. Seeing 10 hands, call is in order. Doorman will secure the doors. Clerk will read the roll.
Carlin, Haskins, Howardson, Simmons, Van Houten.
Representative Howerton votes aye. Representative Carlin votes aye. Representative Estes is excused. Representative Laura Williams is excused. Representative Haskins votes aye. Not seeing 10 hands, call is raised. Does any other member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Will Carpenter votes no. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 120 having voted in favor and 3 against the passage of House Bill 2349, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Clerk will read.
SB 84 by Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to crimes involving property, modifying criminal use of a financial card to include certain conduct involving gift cards.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 84. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? I did that backwards. Any explanations? Any changes? Seeing none. With 123 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of Senate Bill 84, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
Sub HB 2149 by Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications, an act concerning distributed energy resources, requiring distributed energy system retailers to disclose certain information to customers who will construct, install, and operate a distributed energy system, requiring the Attorney General to convene an advisory group to establish a standard form for such disclosures and requiring publications thereof, requiring electric public utilities to disclose certain information to distributed energy retailers, providing criteria to determine appropriate system size for a customer's distributed energy system that is subject to parallel generation, establishing requirements for interconnection and operation of a distributed energy system, increasing the total capacity limitation for an electric public utilities provision of parallel generation service, establishing powers and limitations relating thereto, establishing notification requirements for when a system is no longer producing energy or the customer seeks to repair or rebuild a distributed energy system.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2149. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 123 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2149, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 5 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning elections, relating to the Transparency and Revenues Underwriting Elections Act, prohibiting the use of funds provided by the United States government for the conduct of elections and election-related activities unless approved by the legislature.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 5. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? Clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 86 having voted in favor and 37 against the passage of Senate Bill 5, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 6 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning elections, prohibiting the use of any form of ranked choice voting methods in conducting elections.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 6. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Wassinger votes aye. Representative Humphries votes aye. Representative Roser votes aye. Representative Chuck Smith votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 86 having voted in favor and 37 against the passage of Senate Bill 6, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 23 by Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning insurance, relating to unfair and deceptive acts or practices, requiring agents and insurers to respond to inquiries from the Commissioner of Insurance within 14 calendar days, authorizing certain rebate pilot programs to exceed 1 year in duration.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 23. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 107 having voted in favor and 16 against the passage of Senate Bill 23, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 24 by Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning insurance, relating to the powers, duties, and responsibilities of the Commissioner of Insurance, authorizing the Commissioner of Insurance to set the amount of certain fees, requiring the publication of certain fees in the Kansas Register.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 24. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Chauncey votes aye. Representative Weichel votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 106 having voted in favor and 17 against the passage of Senate Bill 24, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
The Committee on Health and Human Services recommends substitute for SB 29 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Appropriations recommends HB 2237 be passed. The Committee on Appropriations recommends HB 2402 be passed. The Committee on Education recommends SB 78 as amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Education recommends SB 87 as amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Judiciary recommends SB 156 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Judiciary recommends SB 157 as amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Judiciary recommends substitute for SB 54 be amended and the bill be passed as amended.
Introduction of original motions and House resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Resolution 6016 by Representative Rajas, Anderson, and others, a resolution denouncing the planned satanic worship ritual, the so-called Black Mass, on the grounds of the Kansas State Capitol, scheduled to take place on March 28, 2025.
Are there announcements? Representative Hoy replaces Representative Osman on the House Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development on Thursday, March 13th, 2025. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday. Representative Mosley replaces Representative Simmons on the House Committee on Welfare Reform on Thursday, March 13th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday. The Speaker recognizes Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Remind everybody today is Mental Health Advocacy Day at 1 o'clock on the South Steps. There is going to be a large group picture, so everyone's invited to that. And at 2 o'clock on the second floor, there'll be ice cream. We did have a number of people here that were in their lavender or light purple T-shirts. I think I see some up here. If you see them, make sure that you say hello and wish them well. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Stogsdill.
Fans of agenda, just thought I'd borrow that. Tomorrow morning, we'll have agenda meeting at 8 o'clock, 152 South, 8 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Helgerson. No hats in the chamber, Representative.
There are a number of individuals that have not contacted the Statesman Committee and paid their fines. We are not going to have any more listings of individuals until next Friday. But I warn you, if you do not pay your assessment, it can be doubled. And all of you should have received an apple, and we're hopeful that you liked it. If you have any complaints, go to Walmart. No, seriously. Hope everybody enjoys the apple, and we look forward to seeing you in a week from now. And by the way, I owe $2. Not today. You're going to get double.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why do I keep following that? Elections Committee will be in conference with Senate Fed and State at 2:50 today in room 144 South to consider SB 105 again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further announcements, the Speaker for a second time, the Speaker recognizes Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After a round of ranked voting, we will have 8:30 agenda tomorrow morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further announcements, the Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to adjourn.
All right, so since it was brought up, in accordance with House Rule 504, it states that when something's placed on your desk, and I had a few things placed on my desk, and it had a signature on it. I had something else placed on my desk that did not have a signature. And since you brought it up, 125 apples, I believe, were out here. Although I must admit, 3 or 4 were eaten, so we'll go with 121, so the evidence is gone. We'll just, instead of the doubling, we'll just reduce it down to a $2 for the chairman. We're not on announcements anymore. This is my time. I figured mine's coming. So anyways, okay, remember, everyone, appreciate all this. This is good. I appreciate that. Monday, we are going to do pictures. 8 o'clock, West Wing, second floor. We'll get set up. The pictures will probably take place somewhere around 8:15, 8:20, 8:30, however fast we can get lined up and back in. So just remember that. Republicans, tomorrow we will calendar at 8:30 a.m. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Friday, March 13th at 11 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries.